B-A-T. It's in the name.
Welcome into the Helping Healing Humor podcast with Ben and Travis. We are glad that you are with us today on the episode. We have on the podcast with us Mr. Anthony Lamberth. He is the owner of the Baseball Mission. It's a baseball and softball training facility. He is also an elder at the North Bradley Church of Christ in Cleveland, Tennessee, and he is a really awesome guy, and we are glad to have him. We're going to get to that interview in just a few moments. And if you would like, we would love for you to go subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. We'll get to the interview after these messages.
This episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast is brought to you by the Reframing Hope Book Reception on Sunday, November 20th, starting at 2 p.m. at Jacksonburg Church of Christ in Florence, Alabama. Admission and refreshments are free. Discounted paperback copies of Reframing Hope, Our Journey Through Cancer, Adoption, and Love will be available, and Ben will lead a question and answer discussion. Go to benandtravis.com or click the link in the description for more information. Reserve your copy or shirt/book combo. We look forward to seeing you there. I'm Travis Creasy. That's All Pro Counselor Ben Hayes.
That's me. Good to see you.
Good to see you, man. I hope you're doing well on this Wednesday night as we record. And as promised, probably the biggest Miami Hurricanes fan that I know, not at size, but just in fandom, Anthony Lamberth, as promised, is with us on the episode today. How are you, Anthony?
Hi, man. I'm doing great. How are you guys?
You're doing awesome. I'm actually drinking a Sprite that kind of looks a little bit greenish, Miami greenish color there, right? Pretty close.
Pretty much. It's close.
It's in honor of you, I guess.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
We definitely don't need to be drinking it, but there we go.
We need all the help we can get right now. Struggling.
Same here. Same here.
We all understand right now. There's struggles everywhere.
Unless you're a Georgia Bulldog, I think everybody's like, man, things could be better. We've been to Cleveland, Tennessee several times with North Bradley, and we always have a blast. And so we're always thankful for y'all's hospitality there. If you're in the Cleveland, Tennessee area, be sure to go check them out. It's a great congregation, tremendous amount of love that we feel every time we go, and they keep inviting us back. So that tells you a little bit about the grace and mercy. But the last time we were there, we had mentioned something about having a podcast about helping, healing, and humor, mental health, those type things. And you had shared with us that you had a fairly, I think, special and certainly interesting and God-fearing, God-honoring story. And we just wanted to get you on here so that you could share that story and that message. That's what we're about here on the podcast, kind of talking about how God has showed up and showed out in difficult situations. And there are a lot of people out there who tend to think for some reason that Christians either A, have it all together, or B, there's nothing that ever happens that we get discouraged about. And that's just not true. We just have a hope of a life, not just in the hereafter, which we do have that hope, but also in this day and age where we have struggles and we know that God is with us in that. So without me blowing a lot more hot air that I've got plenty of, I'd like for you to share a little bit of your story,
Sure.
Some of the things y'all faced.
Yeah, sure. May 20th, 2015, my daughter was on her way to work, which is probably just a couple miles from the house. She stopped at a red light, and just across the street, it was actually where she worked at. Well, at a daycare. My wife also worked at that daycare. And there was a red light, fire station, and then a convenience store. Well, she was at the third car back. The light changed 7 seconds. She turned a logging truck weighing roughly 90,000 pounds, ran a red light and hit her and killed her instantly. She was 17 years old, fixing to turn 18 years old. She just graduated high school, going to college on a full scholarship. So it was a tough time. The driver's, like I said, 70 and a 35, no CDL, no driver's license, on his cell phone. So it was the worst case scenario possible.
Wow.
Yep, killed her instantly. So, But yeah, but without without our church family, without relying on God, there's no way we could have went through that, without other Christians that wrap their hands, but from other congregations too. I mean, I'm talking thousands of congregations reaching out. That made a difference. And you could just feel the grace, and we would talk about it, and I would talk about it. There would be people that I never even met come to the funeral and say that she changed my life just based on her testimony and the life that she lived. And they didn't even know her. They just knew her. They heard about the accident. They looked her up on Facebook. They looked her up in the news, and it changed their life. So, and then not to mention the next Sunday, we had 5 baptisms for young people at the congregation we attended, because her story was so real that they just couldn't take it anymore. They were finally baptized. So it's been a blessing. It's not a blessing, but good things have come out of such a tragedy.
Yeah, we never want to go through tragedies, but it is amazing how God tends to work through them. And I've spoken to that with my girlfriend that was killed in a car accident, about the same age as your daughter was. Similar situation. But in that, there were several people who became Christians in the aftermath of it. Right. And, you don't want those sorts of things to happen, but you do want people to see the urgency. And so,
absolutely. Yeah. And then in the meantime, we've got a scholarship to the local high school, but most importantly, we were able to build an orphanage in India, the Ashlyn Lamberth Home for Orphan Girls. We built that, and now it's housing 40 girls. We can get up to 60, and not to mention just the fact that they're going to become Christians, and then that's going to just keep going and keep going. So she's impacted lives well beyond our life.
Yeah, man, that's awesome.
Yeah, Jack Honeycutt, who we're friends with, most everybody knows Jack. Well, he was in charge of the India work with Willette, and then we got with him. We raised the money within like 2 weeks. We raised like $15,000 in 2 weeks. It was just a blessing. And then just all from members and other congregations. And then they built it. And then that's it. Then when Jack retired, Zach Holmes took over. And now he's in India at this moment, and he's going to visit the Ashlyn home tomorrow. So,
wow. Yeah. So I want to ask you kind of, I guess this may end up being kind of connected question or connected to what you just said. I hear this all the time from people. I don't know how people do that, or how someone goes through something like that, or how someone deals with that. And you've already given a couple of hints. You've talked about the church, and you've talked a little bit about the process of finding something to sort of help somebody's memory live on. I mean, those are two things that are pretty impactful in helping people. But how do you get through those moments like that? And how did you and your wife, and I know you have other children, handle some of the things that you guys had to face with all that?
Yeah, and we still face it. Every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, any holiday, her birthday, whatever, it always comes up. But we just look at it as, she was such a great influence and such a great person. We know for a fact where she's at, and that we're going to see her someday. And that gives us comfort to know that if we continue to live faithfully, then we're going to see her. And that just kind of keeps us going every day, because we think about her every day, and it's tough, but we know that there's hope, and in hope, there's going to be that happy ending. So and that's just what gets us through.
Well, we, like I said before, we've all experienced, Ben said, from a different perspective, a similar situation. I was friends with Tabitha as well, that passed away from a car accident. It was dating Ben. And it's things like, to me, being with people who have experienced similar, and being a parent of someone is a different perspective, as I mentioned. But there is something about, you wouldn't wish this on anyone else, but then also having people to go through it with, your wife, your son, who's a character himself, that's always the life of the party, or seems to be anyways. He's a great guy.
Sure.
And to have someone to experience that with, there's the empathy and there's the sympathy that goes along with it. And, it's like, I wouldn't wish leukemia on anybody. I wouldn't wish losing, but man, the people who have been through it with me or experienced similar, man, there's just something to that to be able to connect with those people. Are there people that you have been able to connect with, that similar circumstance, maybe not exactly the same, but
well, it's funny. I started a new job in the morning time. I work at Walmart from 5 a.m. to 2 p.m. just to kind of supplement it. Ethan's getting married in April. We got to pay for a honeymoon, all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
So, but I was talking to the guy that was kind of training me, and he said that, hey, I lost my son 3 months ago in a car accident. So I was able to kind of help talk to him about it, and kind of in show him what's going to happen next. Okay, it's been a couple months. Well, in 6 months this is going to happen, and in a year this is going to happen. But he's not a Christian, so he's going to experience it a lot different than we did. Mm-hmm. That time frame. So I'm hoping that'll lead to conversations about how I'm dealing with it, and that'll lead to other things. So, but I've sat down with many families that have experienced tragedies, and every tragedy is different, but the compassion is the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really where my journey, and because of going through something similar, not anywhere on the level because I wasn't a parent, but going through grief or going through tragedy is the reason I got into counseling. It was my reason. I want to help other people, and so on a daily basis I help people going through different things. None of them are the same, and even if it looked the exact same, it's not the same. Nobody goes through any of these things exactly the same, but being able to empathize and being able to connect and help people is such a big part of it. I say all the time, whatever you go through qualifies you to help somebody else through it. And you've been through a lot, and sounds like you were using that to God's glory, even in the tragedy.
Yeah, like even a year or two after her death, I was asked to speak at certain things, and I probably cried 99% of the time. So they really didn't get anything out of it because I was up there just boo-hooing the whole time. They were like, what is this guy? But that has helped me grow and helped. And that brings a little bit more compassion, and people, it hits home more. So we're able to help people in that area.
Well, you were processing it all through that time.
Oh, yeah. Still.
Yeah. I think it's interesting in the Bible, and most of the time it's within the context of confessing sins, and there is obviously power in that. But I think there's also a power in genuineness that, even when we can't put the words, and we've all been to funerals where people tried their best to talk and couldn't, or in your circumstance, go to churches or whatever. And I'm certainly overwhelmed from time to time still with things and processing things, but it's a genuineness that you didn't have to say anything. It was all over your face. It was all over your body language. And most people at some level can connect with that. When you watch a television show and see somebody get emotional, you want to get emotional. And like you said, that brings out compassion, even from the most stone-faced people. That's always been interesting to me to be able that we were given emotion to show compassion, to communicate something that we can't put into words. And of course, then you got the Holy Spirit that's interpreting those things for us as well.
Right. So you mentioned a few moments ago about the girls' home that was started kind of in the wake of all of this. Elaborate a little bit about that girls' home, exactly what what's going on with it. Sorry, my phone dinged. Hang on just a second. I don't know why I got I got a text message in the moment, so let me
Probably get one. I'll probably get
reset. I don't know why
Open the door.
my computer hasn't been dinging like that, but for some reason it decided to. So I'm trying to figure out how to turn it off, and I don't know how to. So
we'll just roll with it. It'll be all right.
Okay. All right. So you mentioned the girls' home. You mentioned that you guys started that pretty quickly, it sounds like, after the tragedy. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that got started and you know, what was the reasoning behind it?
Well, it got started because she wanted to go the next year. She was scheduled to go on a mission trip, because that's something that when she hit 18 that she wanted to do, is start going on mission trips with our congregation. And then obviously she didn't get a chance to do that. So I was thinking, you know, that's something she's always been interested in. She always did local missionary stuff. But it just thought, and Jack just happened to be, we just got hooked up. Jeff Archie, you know, knew Jack real well. So we just got together, and it took, you know, several months of planning and money raising and contracting and all that. And they just started it. And, you know, 15 grand will buy land, a beautiful building with beautiful floors and all the great things that the girls need. They get a bunk and they get like a little dresser. Here, you can't even get a permit for that. You know, so it was just kind of a no-brainer to do something over there with the refund. Just be smart with the money.
Well, that's a tremendous way to honor anyone, especially someone who was so involved in mission work, wanted to be involved in mission work. And I myself have been to India, and I've been to a similar situation in India. And, man, those kids are just like the happiest kids on the planet. You know, they're being taken care of. They're hearing the gospel. They're getting all their needs met by these folks who love them dearly in the name of Jesus. And so I just know similar wonderful thing going on there with those girls, and just a blessing to have your daughter live on in that capacity.
And right beside them's a widow's home. So the widows actually help take care of the girls also. And then there's also a married couple that are there helping them as well. But the widows are primarily taking care of the girls. It gives them something to do. And they're all, you know, members of the church, and because it's all on one big property. And we were able with the money to dig a separate well. So they now both of them have fully functioning wells and working water, where before they couldn't have any of that. So it's really nice.
What a tremendous story. Well, we do a question of the day. And so this week we have the Reframing Hope question of the day. And along with that, Whitney and I, and Ben's going to be there. We're going to be hosting a book reception on November 20th, beginning at 2:00 at Jacksonburg Church of Christ in Florence, Alabama. It's free to attend. We're going to have lots Dr. Pepper, hopefully cookies, that fun stuff. And so we just ask you go to benandtravis.com. You can RSVP for free, so we know how much Dr. Pepper and cookies to buy. But the question today is brought to you by Reframing Hope. And that question is, how can someone who's listening to this episode, who has their heart convicted maybe a little bit to support this home over there in India, how would someone go about doing that if they wanted to do something along those lines?
Yeah, sure. They can just, you can either go to the website at northbradleychurchofchrist.com, or you can visit give the address. And that's something you maybe can put on your website or whatever. It's at the Bradley Place Executive Plaza. You can just send a check there. 1510 Stewart Road, Suite 207, Cleveland, Tennessee, 37312.
Awesome.
And that's the best way to go. You can contact me directly at 423-310-1246, and I can, give you more information on that as well. So.
Excellent. Well, I'll definitely put the link that you mentioned down in our description, so they can just click right there, and I'll put that number down there as well. So it'll make it easy. Of course, we encourage you to do that.
Hey, look, Stetson Bennett didn't like that he got 600 phone calls about, before that game the other day. But I bet if you got 600 phone calls of people wanting to donate, that'd be awesome.
That would be awesome. Absolutely. we have Cash App that we use as well, so they could Cash App us, and we can send all that information. It's $ North Bradley. So
excellent. Sweet. That's great. Yeah, with 600 phone calls about donating, you might could build a whole nother home altogether. So
we could be great. That would be awesome.
But as per tradition on this here podcast, as I say, traditionally, we like to do some fun questions to kind of get to know you. And in the prior to going on recording, we were talking about your love of the Hurricanes. I think we might have mentioned it in the intro. And I may do a couple of fun questions and just use one and maybe use some for bonus content. But if you've got to pick, you got to pick one hurricane. And man, I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on and on. Give me 2 or 3. If you're going to go Hurricanes, who are your top 2 or 3?
Okay. Ken Dorsey, quarterback of that 01 team.
Mm-hmm.
Ray Lewis, but Ed Reed.
Oh,
be able to sit down and talk to Ed Reed. I mean, I see him on the sidelines during the games at the Miami, and it's just to sit down with him and talk football would be just mind blowing.
See, the Baltimore Ravens are my team, my NFL team.
Oh,
love the Ravens.
Right.
So you're speaking my language there with Ray and Ed.
NFL Miami. So you know the Hurricanes all went to there. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it goes deep, man. It could be Vinny Testaverde. I mean, it goes so far back. Jim Kelly and all that he's gone through.
All night,
Oh, yeah. So it's
that late 80s, early 90s, and even beyond, it was just that was the force to be reckoned with. So
it was. And, everybody, 2001, I say, the best team in history because I think 40 guys played in the NFL off that team.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's crazy.
Legitimate arguments. Yeah, nobody can argue with that very much at all.
Yeah. I mean, when you had like Frank Gore, who was your, 4th string guy, and he's going to be a Hall of Famer. So so it's just
ridiculous.
But we've just not had the luck since then. But that's okay. Yeah. That's all right. We'll be all right.
My favorite Ed Reed story, and if you go back, we had Scott Kaiser on, who's a big LSU fan, so he's happy. My favorite Ed Reed story, that's where Ed was from, is Louisiana, and one of the ministers down there played baseball. He was a baseball guy. Ed was not a baseball guy. And so this guy had waited his turn. It was going to be his senior year, and he goes to practice, and he sees this guy, and he's got like track cleats over his shoulder, and this guy's just cranking them over left field, just gone, And he's like, who is that guy? And they're like, he's Ed Reed. And he's like, oh, Ed, what position is he going to play? And it was the position that guy had waited to play all of his life, And he said, I retired from baseball that moment. My baseball career was over in that moment because Ed was going to play that position. But I love that Ed Reed story.
Oh, yeah. Well, The Rock, The Rock had the same thing. He was sitting in the defensive coordinator's office, and all of a sudden Warren Sapp walks in. And he's like, what are you doing here? He goes, oh, I'm moving to defense. And at that point, The Rock was like, yep, I'm done. He said, I'll never see it down again. So sure enough, go to Canada and play.
I think he's done okay, though. I think he's done okay.
I think he's just fine. He's fine. Yeah, he's pretty good. Yeah. Well, he always represents the U, though, everywhere he goes. So that's good. I think we beat Alabama in 91, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Yeah, I jammed my finger punching the ground. That's that one. I was young enough and dumb enough to punch things.
You know how there's always these guys who hold the coaches' belts, so that they don't run out on the field.
Get back guys.
Yeah, they got the get back guys. I think in high school and elementary, middle school, I was Travis's get back guy. Like I had to follow him home, or I had to keep him from punching stuff.
Yeah,
I didn't always succeed in it, but I was, he wasn't even coaching, but I was his get back guy. We just want to remind everyone to go share the podcast, rate 5 stars if you liked it, review this episode. And we appreciate all of you telling others about the podcast and the offerings. And Mr. Lamberth, we are just extremely thankful that you came on with us and shared your story.
All right. Well, thanks for inviting me, guys. It's been a blast. We got to do it again.
Thanks for being with us for this episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast. Be sure to download our free ebook, 28 Days of Focused Living, at benandtravis.com and receive all of our Helping Healing and Humor extra content directly in your inbox. We look forward to having you join us at the same Ben and Travis time, same Ben and Travis channel.